Hey YouTube, Mushoku-sama here. Today we're talking about Luffy's awakening and what I think it is. First, before we talk about Luffy specifically and his awakening, we need to talk about awakenings in general. Now, there's not much we know about awakenings, but what we do know from awakenings, we can actually make it so that we do know specifically how Luffy will awaken. First, we look at zones. Zones can only manipulate their body, and as such, their Devil Fruit awakening is specifically making their body stronger. They get faster, more durable, stronger, and they're able to recover faster. Now when we look at Doflamingo and Katakuri, their awakenings are that they can manipulate on a high end, and without their awakening they can become their Devil Fruit. Katakuri can become Mochi and Doflamingo becomes Strings, and they can also both manipulate their Devil Fruit on a low end scale or on a low scale, which when I say that I mean like Doflamingo can produce mild strings out of his body and Katakuri can release Mochi out of his body as well. When they awaken, they're able to use their Devil Fruits affecting their surroundings, and the manipulation they use is higher. They can both become and manipulate their fruit. Now Luffy can't manipulate his fruit, which goes into what I think his Devil Fruit awakening will be. When Luffy uses Haki, he becomes something called vulcanized rubber, and normal rubber is made up of hydrogen and carbon atoms. It's a compound, and when rubber becomes vulcanized, you need to add sulfur atoms into the hydrogen and carbon atoms of normal rubber so that it becomes vulcanized rubber. And the more sulfur atoms that are added to the rubber, it makes the rubber very dynamic, meaning it's very flexible and it's very stretchy. However, it suffers the one con of being less heat resistant. Without good flexing properties, the vulcanized rubber would just form cracks and lead to breaking. And without flexing properties, we've seen this happen before with normal rubber. If you just get an elastic band made out of latex, you can stretch it, but if you stretch it for too far, it will start to crack and will lead to breaking. Now, I believe that Luffy's Devil Fruit awakening would make his rubber stronger, like a zone, because he can only affect he can only become his fruit. He can only be his fruit. He can't manipulate his fruit. If he can manipulate his fruit, this would be a different story, but he can only become his fruit. So his awakening would be his rubber turning into vulcanized rubber, just normally without Haki. And we've seen Doflamingo when he uses his awakened Devil Fruit, even though his strings are weaker than Luffy when he uses Gear 4, when they're awakened, his strings were stronger than Luffy's Gear 4 without Haki. That's just on their base form, they were as strong as Luffy when he was using Gear 4 Boundman, which is why I believe that when Luffy gets his awakened Devil Fruit, it will be even stronger than Luffy's Gear 4. His vulcanized rubber, even without any Haki, when he goes into his awakened form, his vulcanized rubber is even stronger than when he uses his Haki in his Gear 4. And I also think that he'd be able to turn on and off his awakening, just like how Katakuri, another Paramecia, can, which in this case would be the only difference between a Zoan and Luffy when he awakens. Now, like I said before, when rubber vulcanizes, the more sulfur atoms in it, the less heat resistant it gets. This is very important for what not to say, because when Luffy uses Red Hawk, he goes into Gear 2nd, and he puts Haki around his arm. When he puts Haki around his arm, he's vulcanized, and he uses Gear 2nd for speed and for temperature. When I say temperature, I mean this, because you can produce steam at 100 degrees Celsius. To burn rubber, the ignition temperature is between 260 and 316 degrees Celsius. The middle ground being 288 degrees Celsius. So let's assume that whenever Luffy uses Red Hawk, he's made his body get to the temperature of 288 degrees Celsius. Now, like I said before, steam is produced at 100 degrees Celsius, and when Luffy goes into Gear 2nd, he's constantly emitting steam. So 288 minus 100 degrees Celsius is 188 degrees Celsius that Luffy needs to produce when he's moving his arm to make Red Hawk happen. To generate 188 degrees Celsius, Luffy would have to be moving at speeds of 752 kilometers per hour, which, considering what Luffy can do, is not something that we can say is impossible for him to do. The reason why I say Red Hawk is important is because Red Hawk is the only ability that Luffy has that he hasn't somehow upgraded. Red Hawk is the only ability that he has that is stuck at maximum Gear 2. And the reason I say that is because when you look at Gear 3 Elephant Gun, Luffy, you can say Luffy has upgraded that to something similar, something even stronger in Gear 4, and you could say that's King Kong Gun or Kong Gun. And same thing with Gatling Gun. I've noticed that Luffy's Kong Organ Gun is actually quite similar to Gatling Gun, even though it works a bit differently because his Gear 4 is different to how his base form in Gear 2nd is. It's very similar to Gatling Gun and Jet Gatling Gun. However, Red Hawk, an ability that he made to remember Ace, is something that he hasn't managed to upgrade. This ability is way more important than you're actually thinking it is. This fire itself, fire, is something that could defeat Blackbeard, and I'm about to get into that. Luffy will eventually upgrade Red Hawk, which is why I know it's going to be used for Gear 5, and I'm actually going to make another video specifically on Gear 5 going off of this video, so make sure to subscribe to see that. But we've seen Luffy producing more heat than he previously has, and this was shown when we saw Hold'em versus Luffy. Even though Hold'em did throw a lot of fire at Luffy, so some of that fire that wasn't being moved of Luffy isn't necessary, but it's just there for effect. Luffy was still producing way more fire than he was before. When we look at vulcanized rubber, like I said before, the more vulcanized it is, the more sulfur you add to it, the less heat resistant it gets, meaning the easier it is for it to burn, which means that the temperatures that Luffy would need to be moving at to produce Red Hawk would be even less, but he'd still be moving at the same speed, meaning there'd be more fire, and also the range would also increase. Vulcanized rubber is not only a stronger version of rubber, but it's also shock absorbent. Normal rubber is as well, but vulcanized rubber is on another level of shock absorption. When we look at Blackbeard and his devil fruits, Luffy is obviously going to end up fighting Blackbeard at some point, but if Luffy awakens his devil fruit in any other way, first of all, not only would it be improbable, but it wouldn't really work for the next part of Luffy's journey when he gets off Wano, post Wano. How is if he does awaken at the very end of Wano, or if he does awaken at all, how is his devil fruit working externally going to help him? Not only would it go against how he fights, because he likes to rush in and fight with his hands, so he wouldn't just let his devil fruit do all the work, but it wouldn't really be something that Luffy would use in his next few fights, especially against Blackbeard, because Blackbeard has the Yami Yami no Mi fruit, and when Luffy uses Red Hawk, he wouldn't actually need to touch Blackbeard if his awakening is vulcanized rubber, because if his awakening is vulcanized rubber, the heat resistant, the amount of heat resistance of rubber goes down, meaning, like I said before, it will burn easier and there'll be more fire, more range, and Luffy doesn't need to touch the touch Blackbeard, meaning he doesn't have to get involved in the Yami Yami no Mi fruit. And also because of the shock absorption from the vulcanized rubber, because we don't know if Luffy could handle shock absorption in his base form, so he might not even need shock absorption, but it probably would come, so it has to come in his devil fruit when he gets awakened. But the shock absorption would just mean that Blackbeard's Goro no Mi fruit would basically rendered useless against Luffy, because it's not even working now. He's shock resistant, so why would the fruit that goes off of quakes and tremors be working on Luffy? If you remember Ace's fight with Blackbeard, if you used to do this, who's stronger, Shanks or Ace? Obviously Shanks. Blackbeard is the only person to ever scar Shanks, and he did it on his eye. Shanks was very wary of Blackbeard, and now this is before he got his devil fruit. Well, before he gets one devil fruit. But now imagine Ace is fighting Blackbeard when he has the Yami Yami no Mi fruit, and he's burning him, and he's keeping Blackbeard at bay with his fire. He didn't really get hurt. Yeah, Ace lost, but he didn't really get hurt. So just imagine how things would be used if Luffy was able to use Red Hawk, because obviously Luffy can't exactly touch Blackbeard, otherwise things would kind of go south. But with Red Hawk, this would be a different story, or whatever Red Hawk gets upgraded to, this would be a different story. And we already know Ace isn't as strong as Shanks, But Ace was, even though the yummy no meat fruit means that Blackbeard, when Blackbeard gets hurt, is heightened, Ace was still dealing with Blackbeard somewhat, and we already know that Ace is weaker than Shanks. And just the fact that Ace gave him such a hard time with his fire is proof that fire is the key to defeat Blackbeard. As long as he doesn't get a third devil fruit, this would be the key to defeating Blackbeard. Fire from Luffy's Red Hawk would be the one thing that could take down Blackbeard. Like the video if you like the video, subscribe if you want to see more content like this. I will be making a video on what I think Gear 5 will be in the near future. And comment if you agree or disagree. Comment what you want to see me do next. Luffy has to awaken into organized rubber. It's the only plausible way he can awaken. There's no other plausible way his devil fruit can awaken. Luffy would you would use it in that awakened form, and B, it would even make sense. How can Luffy manipulate his surroundings when he can't manipulate his devil fruit before that? He can only become his devil fruit, so why would he manipulate? And I don't see Luffy, I don't believe Luffy would be throwing punches or making buildings into fists or something like that, and throwing punches into his enemy, but that's just me. Anyway, that's Mushoku-sama signing out. Peace.